Richard Widmark presented himself as the embodiment of cool, principled detachment, a man whose steely gaze and unwavering moral code defined his presence both in front of the camera and away from it. He was Hollywood's unyielding pillar of integrity. Yet, in a startling revelation made just before his death, this very man broke a lifetime of disciplined silence to name 5 fellow actors he could never bring himself to forgive. A list that sent ripples of shock through the world of classic cinema. To truly comprehend the depth of these lifelong grudges, one must first journey back to the unassuming origins that forged his unshakable character. Widmark was not a product of Hollywood glamour. He entered the world in Sunrise, Minnesota, but his roots were planted in the heartland of America. His family soon relocated to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where his father, Carl Henry Widmark, made a living as a traveling salesman. His mother, Ethel May, nurtured a close-knit family, welcoming a second son, Donald, and fostering a bond between the brothers that would remain resilient throughout their lives. It was from his Scottish grandmother, a devoted fan of a cowboy star Tom Mix, that Richard inherited his profound love for the movies. From the age of 4, she regularly took him to the cinema, where the flickering silent films in the dark theatre ignited a deep, unspoken passion that would silently shape his destiny. The family's journey finally settled in Princeton, Illinois, where his father established Henry's Bakery. They lived in the modest apartment above the shop, a humble beginning that provided the stability and quiet solitude for a young boy's cinematic dreams to flourish. No one in that small town could have predicted that from that room, above a bakery, would emerge a Hollywood titan. A man who would carry both an unwavering sense of principle and a list of 5 names he could not pardon to his final day. At Princeton High School, Richard Widmark was far more than a reserved movie enthusiast. He was intellectually sharp, physically athletic, and possessed a latent charisma that led him to play football and be elected senior class president. His life took a somber turn during his college years, when his parents separated. His mother, Ethel, displayed formidable determination, remaining in Princeton to ensure both her sons could graduate from their familiar environment. Richard finished high school at just 16, secured a scholarship to Lake Forest College, and initially set his sights on a career in law. Yet beneath this pragmatic exterior, a different passion was quietly simmering. He continued with football, excelled in oratory contests, and, despite a naturally reserved disposition, ventured onto the stage in school plays. He attempted to suppress this growing interest, perhaps fearing that his peers would perceive acting as a lack of seriousness. But destiny has its own compelling script, and it introduced him to Aura Jean Hazelwood, a fellow drama student whose own ambitions burned just as brightly. She became the catalyst that changed everything. After graduating in 1936, Widmark was invited to remain at the college as an instructor of drama and elocution, a significant honour for someone so young. But the pull of the stage was irresistible. In 1938, he took a leap of faith and moved to New York, encouraged by a friend who recognised his potential in radio. By a twist of fate, Jean Hazelwood was also there, studying at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. New York embraced him swiftly. Widmark began securing roles in radio dramas, his distinctive voice quickly marking him as a talent to watch. Then, on April 5, 1942, as America found itself entrenched in World War II, Richard and Jean were married in her hometown of Evanston, Illinois. Widmark would later confess that from the moment they met, he never had eyes for anyone else. He had, as he said, accidentally fallen absolutely in love with his wife. A love as profound and enduring as the career that awaited him. The marriage of Richard and Jean Widmark became a rare and enduring fixture in Hollywood. A union that spanned 55 years without a hint of scandal, untouched by the turbulence that consumed so many of their contemporaries. During the war, Widmark attempted to enlist, but a perforated eardrum led to his rejection. His younger brother Donald was not so fortunate. Deployed to Europe, his plane was shot down over the Netherlands in 1943. Donald miraculously survived the crash as the sole survivor of his crew, but his freedom was brutally traded for over a year of confinement in a German prisoner of war camp. Though he was eventually liberated, he never truly recovered. Plagued by debilitating headaches, partial paralysis, and constant suffering until his death from a brain tumour in 1955 at the tragically young age of 37. Richard championed his brother's cause relentlessly, later stating that no government could ever fully comprehend the profound pain Donald carried home. while Richard and Jean lived with the constant fear for Donald's life in 1943. Richard's own path was steadily ascending. He appeared on Broadway in Kiss and Tell and toured with shows to entertain American troops, earning enough from radio and theatre to support his family. Then, in 1945, a new joy arrived with the birth of their daughter, Anne Heath Widmark. Soon after, destiny delivered his breakthrough. He was offered the role of the psychotic killer Tommy Udo in Kiss of Death, opposite Victor Mature. The director, Henry Hathaway, was vehemently opposed to his casting, arguing that Widmark looks too intellectual, his high forehead and calm demeanour entirely wrong for a cold-blooded murderer. However, the producer, Darrell F. Zanuck, refused to yield, insisting Widmark was right for the part. That single decision altered the course of film history. In his very first film, in his very first scene, Richard Widmark created one of cinema's most terrifying and unforgettable moments. Audiences were simultaneously horrified and mesmerized. They were captivated by how much they despised Tommy Udo. Overnight, Widmark became a sensation, and Fox signed him to a 7-year contract. He had practically begged for the role and accepted a meagre deal. But that one chilling, grinning act of violence had kicked open the door to Hollywood, and Richard Widmark never glanced back. In 1948, Widmark appeared in Yellow Sky alongside Gregory Peck, names that would later be connected to the 5 individuals in Hollywood he could never forgive. But before those grudges were fully formed, his career delved deeper into narratives of war, loyalty, and complex human nature. In 1951's Halls of Montezuma, a World War II drama, he acted alongside old radio friend Carl Malden, as well as Jack Palance, Richard Boone, and a young actor receiving his first credited role, Robert Wagner. By 1952, Widmark found himself sharing the screen with Marilyn Monroe in Don't Bother to Knock. He remembered her not as a glamorous icon, but as a profoundly fragile figure, a bird with a broken wing who was shy, deeply anxious, and terrified of the world behind the camera. She would often lock herself in her dressing room for hours, vanishing into her fears while the entire crew waited patiently outside. On set, she struggled with her lines and appeared hopelessly unprepared. Yet, when the footage was edited, Monroe underwent a magical transformation, as if the camera alone possessed the secret to her luminosity. Despite the swirling rumours about her private life, Widmark was unequivocal. Not with him. She did not engage in any flirtatious behaviour. 2 years later, in 1954's Broken Lance, Widmark worked again with Robert Wagner, this time alongside the screen legend Spencer Tracy. That film concluded his 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox. Now 40 years old, Widmark felt drained by the studio system. More than fatigue, he believed he can achieve greater artistic and financial independence beyond the tight control of a major studio. His daughter would later describe him succinctly as a family man who valued peace over fame. At that time, the Widmarks lived a quiet life on a farm in California's San Fernando Valley, a world away from Hollywood's glare. Seeking creative autonomy, Widmark founded his own production company, Heath Productions, named after his daughter's middle name. It was the dawn of a new era, one driven by a man determined to control his own destiny, yet still carrying the silent weight of 5 actors he could not pardon. The first name on his private list was Frank Sinatra. The world was enchanted by his charisma, but Richard Widmark remained immune. Their collaboration on The Detective in 1968 left Widmark seething. Sinatra consistently arrived late, was minimally prepared, and approached each scene with a casual indifference that directly opposed Widmark's strict professional discipline. A crew member later recalled Widmark's visible disgust. As if Sinatra's behaviour was a mockery of their entire craft. To Widmark, acting was a sacred art. To Sinatra, it appeared to be a trivial distraction. The second name was Marlon Brando. Widmark openly acknowledged Brando's genius, even calling him brilliant. But he held that brilliance accountable to a higher standard. He despised the disruptive chaos that Brando's method acting often introduced to a set. Instead of disciplined preparation, Brando relied on unpredictable instinct, frequently discarding scripted lines, improvising erratically, and dismantling the carefully constructed rhythm of a production. Though they never worked together directly, Widmark once made a pointed remark that many believed was aimed directly at Brando. stating that some people need chaos to create, but he himself required focus. The third figure was Tony Curtis. When they worked together on the Longships in 1964, there was no professional camaraderie, only a palpable frost. Curtis seemed more preoccupied with his reflection in a mirror than with the script, obsessing over his hair, his posture, and his overall appearance. To him, the set was a stage for personal vanity. To Widmark, it was a workshop for building authentic character. The tension was so thick, the crew could feel it, with one assistant noting that Widmark's issue was not with who Curtis was, but with the artificial persona he persistently projected, valuing appearance over the heart of the performance, a sin Widmark could not overlook. The fourth was Robert Mitchum, an actor famous for his cool, effortless indifference, his fondness for alcohol, and his belief that acting required no strenuous effort. Mitchum famously boasted that he needed no preparation. He simply arrived, delivered his lines, and departed. Hollywood often romanticized this nonchalant attitude. Widmark found it contemptible. For him, every single scene was a battle to uncover a deeper truth, not a casual exercise to be breezed through with minimal investment. After observing Mitchum, Widmark once confided to a friend that no one reaches the pinnacle of their profession without sweating for it. The two men represented diametrically opposed philosophies. One who fought passionately for every moment of truth on screen, and another who seemed to drift through them with detached ease. Then came the fifth, and perhaps most revealing name, Kirk Douglas. Both men projected a powerful, intense masculinity on screen, but this very similarity ignited a fierce rivalry rather than mutual respect. Widmark believed Douglas possessed an insatiable hunger to dominate every frame. His voice, his gestures, his very expressions all seemed designed to command absolute attention, as if the film existed solely as his personal vehicle. It was whispered throughout Hollywood that Widmark had once refused a project with Douglas for one simple, chilling reason. He believed there was only room for one fire in a scene. For Widmark, acting was never a platform for ego, it was a pursuit of integrity, and anyone who violated that principle, whether through arrogance, laziness, or disrespect for the craft, had committed an unforgivable transgression. Despite these professional frustrations, Widmark continued to build a formidable career. He sought creative control through his production company, and chose his roles with care. He starred in films like Time Limit and The Tunnel of Love, and his presence became a familiar and respected fixture for audiences nationwide. When questioned about the loss of privacy that came with fame, he responded without hesitation, stating that anyone, no matter how famous, could live a normal life if they truly desired it. In 1960, he took on the defining role of Jim Bowie in The Alamo, a massive production directed by and starring John Wayne. Initially, Wayne had wanted him for a different part and expressed doubts that Widmark's stature was suitable for the legendary Bowie. Widmark's reply was characteristically resolute. He would do it. And he did, proving that determination and presence far outweighed physical height. He co-starred with greats like James Stewart and appeared as the American prosecutor in the monumental Judgment at Nuremberg. By 1962, he was part of the epic ensemble of How the West Was Won. He received well-deserved recognition, including the D.W. Griffith Lifetime Achievement Award, presented by his dear friend Sidney Pollack. But a profound personal challenge emerged when his beloved wife, Jean, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Overnight, Widmark the actor transformed into Widmark the devoted, full-time caregiver. He returned to the screen only once more in 1991's True Colours, largely to honour a professional commitment. A long-time family friend, and lived out his days in quiet reflection in Roxbury, Connecticut. On March 24, 2008, at the age of 93, Richard Widmark passed away at his home. He was remembered by friends as a man of quiet honour, deep love, and unwavering integrity, who lived and departed entirely on his own terms. His legacy is a powerful testament to a life lived with principle, a career built on discipline, and the silent, steadfast grudges he held against those who he believed betrayed the sacred craft of acting.